particular things were on the table.
What
Because I could have put anything on the table, so why do you think I put those things on the table?
I am presuming that they have something to do with how you're gonna relate this whole quarter's lesson.
Yeah, that's something to
Otherwise,
do
why
with
would they be
that.
there?
Why would they be there?
Is this a key?
Down.
That's a key ring, Sam, and it's also a little light. But you are exactly right. Because one of the things about teaching that I like to do is to have something there when the students come in. Something that they can manipulate, something they can do, some question they may ponder that does point us back to the lesson. One of those old school teachers, Angela's an old school teacher, Rachel was a recent old school teacher, but kind of capture everybody's attention when they come in. So these particular items I put on the table, first of all, the one with the dots, because I want us to get in our heads that we've always got to connect the dots. With whatever we're teaching, we need to connect the dots to some prior learning that people may have, to the current learning we want to do so that they can use that as a springboard to future learning. So that's why I had to connect the dots and think outside the box. That sometimes we think we have to stay within that Sunday school book. That's it, and that is a wonderful resource. But that is not the only tool for us to use. So to think outside the box of things that you can use. And the second thing on the table, does anybody know what these are?
They look like transformers.
They
Yeah,
are
transformers.
transformers.
These are cool.
These are cool.
Yeah.
Because you can manipulate
I
them
never
on one
could do
side.
it anyway, but-
It's a letter,
Yeah.
and on the other side, it's a transformer. I put these out because we should be helping people transform their lives. They should not be the same when they leave as they were when they came in.
Amen.
So we need to connect the dots, and we also need to help people transform, to change, and to be all that God has created them to be. And we know, and it's great talking to Christian educators and Sunday school folks and saved folks, because we know some of that information, but we've also got those individuals who come to us who are not at the point that we are. And so we have to present our lessons in such a manner that we can capture them. One of the things I like about this particular quarter, and one of the things I like, I guess, period, is that whenever I'm called to teach or to share something, it always has a message in it for me. So that's the great thing about teaching or sharing some information. What we are going to do today to start off is that I'm going to briefly review the theme from last quarter, because I don't think we can get to a new quarter without some review of what we learned in the last quarter. And I'm a very hand-dominated person, so you'll kind of see my hands going various ways. What are some of the things that we did learn from the last quarter?
Well, the last quote was about faith.
About
Overall.
faith.
Yeah.
And it was using our faith to respond to God's grace. That's what all of those lessons were about, to respond to God's grace and our faith in doing that. The lessons in this quarter are designed to teach us or to reinforce, because we may already know some of this information, but to teach us to honor God with our personal praise, our personal worship, to honor God through our places of worship, and then to honor God by making Him our number one. That's what this quarter is all about. And to me, that's a very exciting thing. And that's why I put the honoring God up here as our focal point, because that's the whole point of the quarter. And so with those who are returning to our Sunday school classes for this quarter, as well as for those who may be new, we want them to be reminded that we've just come across a bridge of faith. That we've come over that. We've come across knowing how to respond to God in faith through trials, through tribulations, through good times, through ups, through downs, that we've responded because last quarter gave us sort of a historical perspective about God and His creation and how He had set things up and how He was setting things up for us. And now we're at the point that we have that background. We have that knowledge. And so now how do we honor that? How do we give honor to the God who has done so much for us? So that's what we're going to focus on today. And to get started with that, I wanted to do one final little demonstration here. I've got a cup here. Will somebody like some water in this cup? Rachel, you want some water? I can pour you a little bit.
I don't think I've
It all leaked out because it holds nothing. But what if I put this cup in another cup
All right.
and then offer you some water?
Screen first.
The first cup serves as a reminder. That's our lives. They're holy. They're messed up. They're of really no use. They really are not when we try to act on our own strength. But then Jesus comes around and says, I got you. Then you become a useful vessel. And we want people to know that out here on your own, you are of no use to anybody. Get this up out of here. I got so many holes in it. Any work that you do, you may hold it for a while. I could probably hold a thimble full of water in this cup. But to be all that God created you to be, you have to let Jesus say, I got you. I got you covered. And we want to drive that home in every aspect of the lesson today. We want to drive that home. That we honor the God who says, I got you. Wherever you are, whatever you do, I got you. And to me, that is such a lifting of my whole spirit.
Yeah.
And we want other people to have that same lifting of their spirit. So when we look at our lessons for this quarter, there are a couple of things that I want us to do. One is that in teaching a lesson, we always need to have an objective. What do we want people to be able to do as a result of listening to us for 45 minutes? Because when we say I want them to understand the lesson, how do I know whether you understand it or not? I can tell. You can look at me and make me think you understand it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you understand it. So what do we want people to be able to do? So that either through conversations or through observances or listening as you are walking about, that's the transformation. We should be able to see some evidence of what we've taught. If not, then we need to go back, and that gets into some of that assessment that we were talking about this morning. If we're not seeing any change as a result of our Sunday school lessons, then maybe we need to step back and reassess that. So what do you want people to be able to do? The one thing that I want you to be able to do as a result of our 45 minutes together, because I was told to keep this to an hour, is to begin the process, start writing one objective for your class that either that you're going to teach, or write an objective that you want to send out to the adults that you kind of coach along the way, or one objective that you want your Sunday school teachers. I want to make sure that you do this, that you know this as a result of studying your Sunday school books. that's why we need to make sure that we use other resources, that we use other helps. And I know with the group sitting here, I don't do anything without one of my Bibles. And I sleep with about 3 or 4 on the bed. But at least one of them. And the other thing I do is I also have some type of Bible commentary. Something that's gonna give me just a quick overview of what the chapter is about. So that I know what I'm dealing with, what's the context, what am I going into. So our lessons for this quarter, starting with the December lessons. And I've got some objectives. As a result of the first quarter's lessons in December, these are just my objectives after reading the lesson. These are things that I would want people to be able to do when they leave. Define honor, because we're talking about honoring God. What does that mean to honor God? You know, people will say that if you ever watched entertainers on TV, I give honor to God. Okay, what does that mean? Is that just verbiage? And to list 3 common areas where we generally place honor. Where do we place honor? Can you all give me 3? Where do we place honor? We place honor in where? We place it in money?
Definitely.
You know, hey, if I got money, then I can rule the world. That we give honor to money, we give honor to entertainers. But where do we place honor? The second objective I have for the lesson in December, identify ways in which Christians honor God. How do we do that as Christians? Because if we've got somebody in there that this is their first time in Sunday school and they want something different in their lives, they want to be a part of the fellowship, then tell me how. How am I supposed to honor God? Because if I don't know how to do it, then I'm coming here because I want to be taught how to do it.
And then you're gonna have people that, I've heard persons to say, well, I can't honor God. He already has the honor.
And that is a discussion I've heard many times.
He does.
From the clergy
He does.
side, that's improper for us to say that.
But we've got 4 lessons that we're covering
Which
in
is
December
interesting, yeah.
that are all about David. And David honoring God. I mean,
Yeah.
because God had blessed him. God,
Yeah.
he could not have been king
Yeah.
without the blessings of God. So I think we need to be armed with knowledge
Yeah.
so that we can explain that to people. But again, that goes back to what's your definition of honor?
Amen.
And then discuss why demonstrating honor to God is important for continued growth. Because how many of us want to just stop where we are? We don't want to grow anymore. You know, hey, God, I've got it all. Don't want to do that. Define honor, list areas where we place honor, and then identify ways that Christians honor God. And why is that necessary for us to continue growing?
Amen.
Because then we become stagnant. We don't learn anymore. And how many of you have read a chapter in the Bible and you've read it over and over, and then this one time you read it, it's like,
Like, okay.
I never knew that. I never saw that in there. But it's necessary for continued growth. And then we have a third one that says, because our lessons are about David, and then we get one in there about Mary. Compare and contrast. Look at the 2 styles. David praised, David danced. Mary developed a song. I mean, it just rose up within her. What's the difference in how they showed honor to God? And then let's talk about, how did you see honor in David's work? How did you see honor in Mary's work? So those are the 3 objectives that I would have for these lessons on David. Worship, David's praise. So let's start by, somebody got a phone or your iPad there, look at the word honor. What does it mean to honor? Because that's our first one. Honoring God, that's the whole theme of the quarter. And that's a theme that as we begin the Advent season, the anticipation of the coming of Christ, why would we not want to focus on, let's show him honor. So what does honor mean?
High respect, great esteem, adherence to what is right or to conventional standard. Let's see, trying to find the right one here. Regard with great respect.
That's it.
That's the
That's the
major
one.
one. What does honor mean? Let's go further. Honor is a special award. Let's get rid of
God.
that's a noun.
Regard with great respect.
Regard with great respect, honor. Somebody high esteem, we look up to. Well, in our lessons starting in December, we start off talking about David's worship. And David worships God through everything that he does. David worshiped because he was a man after God's own heart. He wasn't a perfect man. That wasn't his claim. But the intent of his heart was focused on God. And that's what I like about this first quarter, because it talks about your personal, we should be talking about your personal praise, your personal worship. How many of us have heard people say, oh, God knows my heart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he really does. He really does know
You
your
know,
heart.
for real.
Sometimes we may not want him to know what's in our heart, but when we look at the lessons on David, it was very clear. David had an intent to worship. It wasn't by accident. It wasn't something he was forced into. That was his intent. He had a desire to show God because God had just blessed him so. And I think sometimes we look at, what are blessings? We look at blessings to be something tangible that we have to lay our hands on or our claim to. And so when we have discussions in our classes about how God had blessed David, we need to highlight the fact that it is not just tangible things. That those are blessings, they are indeed, but because I don't have what you have, does that mean I'm less blessed?
No.
And we need to kind of dispel that prosperity blessing rumor.
And maybe that's what we need to do, define blessing.
Well, what is blessings?
it?
Look up
Yeah,
blessings. Rachel, you
especially
got
for
your phone
the-
up?
for
What is
those
blessings?
younger classes, because we do mix them up with that word, I think.
We do.
Get them confused.
We do. Look it up and see what do you have with because you'll get into some of that when you want people to define honor and to list areas where we generally place honor. We place honor on the person or in the person whom we feel has been blessed.
Blessing.
So what's
God's
blessing?
God's favor and protection. A prayer asking for God's favor and protection.
Anybody else got a different meaning?
A beneficial thing for which one is grateful.
One is grateful.
Something that brings well-being.
Okay, on well-being. I looked up blessings probably a couple of weeks ago in a class that I'm taking, a Bible study class, and it's on the great I Ams of God. And one of the things we had to, I looked up in the blessing in the Hebrew language means an inheritance. It's an inheritance from God. So you are inheriting my peace. You are inheriting my provisions for you. You are inheriting my protection for you. You know, as we've come a long way, some of us seem to think, we have kind of gotten away sometimes from God's intended meaning from the intended meaning of comments. But yeah, that blessings, but David recognized all of that throughout all of these lessons, and it doesn't matter whether you teach preschool or you teach sainted seniors, the theme is still the same. How do you honor God? Or how can we honor God that when we leave here, that we have a clear idea of what it means to give honor to the one who made us, what it means for us to take a look internally at where we're placing honor. What are we doing here? Why are we glorifying? And as such, we teach our kids. We teach those under us, even if we don't have any kids, we teach the younger women in the church that this is what you glorify. We teach the younger men in the church that this is what you glorify, if we don't do that. But in David's praise and thanksgiving to God in the December lessons, I mean, he gets all excited about building this temple for God. Gosh, he wanted to do that, and I've revisited that many times over my life, because was that a good idea for him to do that?
Oh, yeah.
That was a great idea, but what was wrong with it?
His hands were too dirty.
His hands were too dirty. And God can use some dirty people now.
I know, but it was too bad.
Motive.
Motive?
And then, yeah.
I can tell, don't we say that all things work together for my good, even my enemies? So if God had wanted David to do that,
He wasn't, that wasn't his.
he could have done it.
Yeah,
Timing, purpose.
okay.
That wasn't the purpose God had for his life.
Mm.
That was a great idea. And I think sometimes we have to help our members see they're good things.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not God things for you. And why is that so difficult for us? Let's talk about that for just a minute. You know, God, we love to quote Jeremiah 29:11.
Yeah.
That I know the plans I have for you. We love that. I can dance off of that one.
Yeah.
You know, everybody probably could.
Yeah.
But so what's wrong with us that we don't let God's plan manifest itself?
Impatience.
Impatience.
And sometimes it is timing.
Timing.
He wasn't ready for that to move. You know, I can just remember all the goals and things I had in my mind when I was Christian Aid Director. Things that I wanted to see done, things that I wanted to see, things I thought was in God's plan. And it wasn't for me to do. And I think that maybe the next generation will get that done, but sometimes it's just not for you.
Not for you.
And that's why I say impatience, because it's like we forget you're not gonna do it on, we don't wanna always do it on God's time. We wanna do it on our time, you know, and then sometimes that goes back to honor, you know, who you honor. Are you honoring self, or do you want the honor, or are you honoring, you know, God?
And then there's some things that's just not for you.
Amen.
They're
Amen.
not for you.
It's just not yours. That's
They're
right.
they're beautiful things, they're great things, not for you. You're not equipped to handle those things. You know, the saying that people will say, you want the glory, but you don't know my story. You don't know what I've come through to get to this point, and God knows what you will have to go through to get to the next point. I mean, if we can just imagine to get from here to over there, the devils that we'd have to slay, the wolves that we'd have to beat back. You know, I often say sometimes that, hey, God created me at the right time. I couldn't have come through any earlier than I did. I couldn't have come through
Right. So
the
true.
civil rights struggle. You know, I don't think I have that in me. When I look back and see all that our ancestors had to endure. But sometimes, Angela, you said it's impatience. Sometimes I think there's just a little bit of, I know what's best for me.
Me.
You know, we hate to admit that. But it's like, I know what I like, I know what I can do, and I want that, and I know it'll be good for me.
And sometimes we've been in the habit of just doing for ourselves. and we forget how important, not the impatience part, but we forget to connect with God before we do anything, because we're so used to it.
And David prayed. I mean, when you go through these lessons in December, he prayed. I mean, David talked to God. I mean, they were Psalms about God's protection and God, you're always there and you lift me up. David did all, but it still was not God's purpose for him
Sure.
to do that. And then what happens when you don't get what you think you ought to get?
Well, hopefully you
Is that
learn
right?
and move on.
Hopefully
you learn.
You learn and move on. What did you say, Rachel?
I said you get crazy.
You get crazy. That's kind of usually what happens. You get crazy. And there's certainly an element of us, and I think as you grow, not in age, but necessarily, but as you grow in spiritual maturity,
Yeah.
you learn
Yeah.
to say that okay, God didn't mean for me to do that. And David got to that point because even though he wanted to do it, and he was making preparation, I mean, he set up the Levites and he identified, okay, you get the musicians and you have them come and he set up all the I call them not utensils, but all of the things in the tent, that this is the way they need to go, and he had certain members that he identified who would do different things. I mean, we have people in our churches who do different things
I was
to
just
set
gonna
up
say,
for the
but
service.
That's not easy to do what he did. He's an organizer. He's
Organizer.
a worship, or when you look at that, and it just came to me while he was a worship organizer, and everybody cannot do that.
Everybody can't do it.
Now, maybe Solomon was there, his job was to be a builder. Who knows? You know, that's God's will.
But when we look at that, a worship organizer that you said just came to you, and how many times have you heard this story about David?
Yeah.
But sometimes we need to step back and take a look and what is our purpose here? What is my purpose in this? And that was his. But David, as I said from the beginning, had that desire.
Sure. He had a goal and he wanted to see it to the end.
But his goal was always focused on God. It wasn't to give David some glory.
No.
It was he wanted to just let everybody know how great his God was, how good he is, and to keep him pointed at him. David was grateful. You know, how do we show gratefulness to God? That's a part of honor, that we are grateful
That's a big part.
for whatever God does for us. And I think sometimes when we reach a certain age, we can, if we aren't careful, allow ourselves to stop manifesting gratefulness. That oh yeah, I'm grateful. You know, God woke me up this morning. God set me on my way. God woke you up this morning for something more than just to set you on your way. And God, I'm grateful for the opportunities that you're giving me today. Because you know me, you know what I can do, you know what you have for me to do. So David was grateful. David was living in a palace. I mean, it was a fine place. He had everything. And he did not want to live in that luxury while God still dwelt in a tent. Because David was a giver. He was a giving person. He wanted to give back to God. And so our members, again, identify ways in which Christians honor. We honor God by being grateful. We honor God by service. That's how we do that. That you don't come into the church and get you a pew and that's it. Hey, I've joined. I'm good to go. But by service, because if you want to continue growing by studying, that's how we honor God. That's how David did it. And we need to make sure that we do that. I have a question on here. Are our services joyful? Because David, when he was in worship, that was a joyful man.
Yeah.
So are we joyful in our services?
In our worship services?
Yes.
Yeah, but we should also be joyful in the service that we give.
David was always,
Yeah.
I love the passages of where he's hiding. I mean, where he's hiding from Saul. But he was still joyful in the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Even at some of his lowest points,
Mm.
he was joyful in the Lord. I mean, even at the point of when his son died, I mean, he tore his clothes. He was just in so much grief, and he moved on. I mean, he was still grateful after that period. So we need to help people joyful. How are you joyful when your heart is breaking? People ask that all the time. Ask that all the time. I have a friend, she said to me that she and her husband were going their separate ways, and she said, well, because I think God wants me to be happy. And so she said, don't you think so? And she's a dear friend, and I said, well, I haven't read anywhere in the Bible where God wants you to be happy. I said, God wants you to be joyful. I said, but happiness is kind of here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Happiness doesn't last, but how do we help people be joyful when things are not going well for them? David had a joyful spirit. So how do we do that? What are some examples? How do you think you do it?
Well, I think you have to I know you have to remind people of God's protection and love and caring. Because unless you have that, I don't know how you can be joyful. That somebody's got your back with whatever you're going through. Like you
God
said.
says, I got you.
With the
Yeah,
hose.
not alone.
I got you. And David remained joyful. And I guess the final question in our discussion on David is again, how do we remain faithful when God doesn't answer? Because there are periods when God doesn't answer.
Mhm.
You got to learn how to pray and be straight up with God on how you feel. That's a personal That's a personal thing.
Because again, we will have some returnees or we'll have some first-time people in this quarter. And when we start talking about these things and these trials, and David was a good man, if we say he was a man after God's heart and everything didn't go his way, how do you remain faithful in that? And we need to help our people see that.
I think when they read the Psalms, you can't help but see the prayers in there. I mean, because when you're down, if you can flip open any Psalm just about, you'd be surprised what kind of lift you can get by reading what you know you went through as well as what he says.
Study the Psalms of
And if you don't
David.
always know where to look, I know there have been times that I had gotten so down that I actually said to God, I was angry with him. You know, like I was ready to, but then he brings to the forefront a scripture, you know, to read. But if I hadn't just upbringing, and I mean, I have really just, because I walk around the house talking to myself, I have really, you know, just had arguments, you know, with him. Why did you put me in this position?
Yes.
And I'm angry with him. And then it's like after I calm down, either a song will come to me or a scripture
Yeah,
will come to me
Yeah,
that changes it all around, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, well, you've been with me all along. It just wasn't the way I wanted it.
And we have to help people see that.
yeah.
That we remain faithful. This lesson on David is to teach us that we remain faithful. 4 lessons on David. Study the life of David. Be able to talk about David and all that he went through. Young children, teenagers, young adults, senior adults. We all face the same issues. We face them on a different scale or a different level, but issues are the same. Young children go to school and Sally's not playing with me today.
Yeah,
What do? I don't have no friends.
yeah, yeah.
They are down. We have to recognize that we need to lift them up. So I didn't plan the review focused on a particular title for a lesson. Because the theme runs throughout for everybody, and that's one of the things that I hope we can do is that everybody who leaves our Sunday school classes, that they are all focused on what does it mean to honor God. regardless of what my lesson title was, the theme for the Sunday school or the church school is honoring God. And so how would I do that? And one of our other lessons in the quarter, in the December lessons, talks about Mary. So it moves from David and his worship and his praise. Again, it's his internal, it's his heart praise. It moves to Mary. And we all know that that's a story that would probably just blow any of us away at this point. And certainly if we were a teenage girl, it would have blown us away. And our story starts when Mary goes to visit Elizabeth. And when the two ladies who were pregnant see each other, Elizabeth's baby leaps in her womb, and Mary just breaks out in a song because she is just so excited, so overjoyed at what God is entrusting her with. Can you imagine that? That when God gives you something, anybody ever had an idea that God gave you and you just walking around with it, that you just want to just explode because you know it is just so great. You know you didn't think of it in your own strength, and you know it had to come from God, and that you just say, gosh, God, thank you. Thank you for that. And so she just a praise song. A song, that her words became a song. And again, we're looking at personal worship, personal praise, how we honor God internally. Because again, her heart, the intent of her heart, you have to have a heart to worship and praise. And because if you don't, then nothing that's said in the service, nothing that's said in the lesson is going to do that for you. That you have to do that. And then we end in December with a lesson on prayer. And I think that was so intentional to start the December lessons on praise and having a heart for it and fighting through. And sometimes, don't you have to fight for your praise?
Sure.
You have to fight through to get to praise, you know, because I come to church some Sundays and I ain't feeling it today. I'm not gonna stand up. I don't feel like standing up. And before you know it, you're out. You're out. It's like, okay, but what happened till it didn't feel like it? So you do, because you have to take your mind off of you. And I think that's what these lessons are showing us. That they're showing us some issues, they're showing us some problems, but again, we're not to stay there with the problems. Let's use this as a spring to get me to where, hey, if he could do this more than 2,000 years ago, and God doesn't change. So he can certainly do it for me in my little situation. Because compared to all David went through, my situation is little. Compared to Mary being a teenager, being impregnated, and not ever having a relationship with a man, my situation is a small little situation. And so we need to help our people see that.